What's going on, guys? SasDude here. You can just call me Saz. I hope everyone is having a Borderlands type of day because today we have another book talk, and that's on Borderlands Unconquered. This is the second novel in the series written by, as you can see there, John Shirley. And I just recently finished this a couple days ago, and so I just want to go into it, and I don't want to delay any further, right? So how did I come across the novels and how did I uh, learn about John Shirley? So a year or so ago, I went through and beat every single Borderlands in preparation for Borderlands 4. And as we all know now, Borderlands 4 really kind of floundered on its face. And I'm pretty sure they're only updating the game because of the legal obligations they have with the DLC and such. So I'm gonna pick up Borderlands 4 Super Duper Edition in a year or two now when all the DLC is done and the development is done. So I just want a little side tangent. I just want to thank the people who have and who will subsidize my purchase in the future because I knew the game was looking kind of bad and all the media around it. But anyways, thanks super fans, right? BL3 reference. And this book kind of has a little bit of BL3 in it, right? Uh, Funny but sad to say. Anyways, after that tangent, I became interested in the world of Borderlands after finishing Borderlands 1, 2, Tales from Borderlands, uh, New Tales from the Borderlands pre-sequel, uh, and I decided to like go for external media. So I got art books, I got novels, I got the comics, and I came across the trilogy of novels by John Shirley, and I read The Fallen, and I wasn't too impressed. I didn't come away from it very, amazing, right? So I thought it wasn't that great of a book. So I thought the same would be for Unconquered. So after I read The Fallen, I picked up Unconquered and Gunsight, which are the second and third novels respectively. And then I picked up World of Borderlands, which is a lore book, and I was really impressed by this novel compared to the first one, which was barely a Borderlands book, right? Granted, it did come out in 2011, um, and Borderlands didn't have much lore at the time because Borderlands, 2 came out in 2012 or something like that. I don't remember. 2013, something like that. But yeah, I bought these alongside some of the Borderlands art books, and I came away really impressed. I was impressed with the story, the addition of Daphne as a new character standing in for Lilith, the action scenes, and basically everything was written pretty smartly with liberties taken here and there with characterization. And so let's talk a little bit about John Shirley here. John is the kind of the go-to guy when it comes to video game movies and novelizations. He's written over 84 books. He's worked on plenty of films, including The Crow before he got a script rewrite. He's worked on a couple more films too. He's a frontman in his own band, I believe, called the Screaming Geezers, and he works on lyrics for other bands. One of them is called like the Blue Oyster or something like that. But yeah, he's mainly well known for his work on the Crow script before it got rewritten and the Bioshock novelization, which is I think called Rapture, and he's won multiple rewards as well. So he's a pretty accomplished guy, right? So now I'm gonna go over and switch the camera so we can see. I can show off the book, right? And we're gonna go from there. And after that, we're gonna talk about the plot, the characters, the writing, etc. So I'll see you there. All right. So let's talk about the appearance here. The book very much stands out from others due to its smaller nature, similar to, I believe, what you call mass market paperbacks or something of that regard. It's a pretty small book. When I carry it around in my side cargo pocket on my legs, or I shove it in my back pocket to keep my hands free when I was carrying it from places and such. You got the gray and blue spine, which very much stands out on the shelf, and it's got the blood spattered and the scratches on it with the publisher right here, Borderlands right here, name and author. And it's just very, it's not very big font, but it's like decent enough font. The design choice is very eye appealing. Cover has Mordecai on the front, And the background, if you recognize, is Crom's Canyon. So Crom would be up there, and that's where you get one of the vault pieces from, which he took from Earl, I believe. So I believe the loading. This is taken from the loading screen, the Crom's background, and I think this is also from like a 3D render, perhaps. Looks like a 3D render of some sort. Maybe it's an artwork. I can't really tell of Mordecai uh from just the base game. Maybe they posed them specifically for this. Maybe they didn't. I'm not sure. But I love the classic Borderlands on the font. It'd be great if it was embossed, like the Borderlands 2 360 game cover. You have the rippled like black award-winning novel Mordecai front and center. You have the cool blue of the logo right here. You have the blood spatters and the like the rust and stuff like that on the on the bottom with the blue. Very cool like design choice, very cool font choice, and I really think that this book is, quite beautiful for its size and for what it's like trying to achieve, trying to stand out to perhaps the Borderlands players and maybe someone who doesn't know who Borderlands is. You look at the back here. It's published by Pocket Books. Copyrights go to Gearbox and 2K. And according to the back of the book, it says the cover design was provided by Gearbox. So Gearbox gave them the cover for this, the design probably. About 400 pages long, 375 here and there. So doesn't really overstay its story too much. But we're gonna go into the plot next and the writing and things like that. So I'll see you there. All right, guys. Now that I've showed off the book, let's talk about the plot overview. Plot is very simple and starts with Marcus transporting Claptrap and a certain female passenger, who I shall not name, along with a young man to Firestone. They get ambushed by some psychos and are forced to camp out. And while they're camping out and shooting some psychos here and there, Marcus tells them a story about Ginella or Gynella. I'm gonna call her Ginella, the book's antagonist, and her run-ins with Roland, Mordecai, Brick, and Daphne. And Daphne is the newest character standing in for Lilith. We're first introduced to Ginella, a striking, beautiful woman who's using a drug called the Sus drug to make cycles fall in love with her and obey her using her mind control. She also has like a neck thing that she uses, like a pheromone thing, and it cranks them up, and she can kill people that way. They explode in the guts and crap like that, right? She plans to build this psycho army to take over Pandora and is interested in Roland. I would say she's infatuated. She's obsessed with Roland due to his skill and proceeds to hunt him down the whole story. After that, Roland and Mordecai are on their way to hunt some chrysalis to get some iridium before coming across a bar with some of Ginella's soldiers. I think one of them's name's Broomy, who plays a role in the later story, and another one. I don't remember her name. But they're Ginella's soldiers who are on leave, and they're interested in Mordecai and Roland. Roland recognizes one of the other women that are not part of Ginella's camp, and her name is Daphne. He can't really tell whether she's a hired assassin or not. If, like, it's kind of like when you know somebody but you don't know somebody, right? So he's not sure if she's Daphne Culler, the famous assassin who worked, I think, for the Dahl Corporation, I believe. I might be wrong on that. I didn't write it in my notes. But yeah, Mordecai and Roland get in trouble with the two of the Ginella soldiers, and uh, they get out of Dodge. They ask Daphne to go with them. Daphne refuses and says she has somewhere else to be. Then Roland and Mordecai drive over to a mine looking for Brick to help them out on their quest for the iridiums and perhaps to deal with Ginella. Daphne shows up as well with Brick because Brick is guarding a mine, like some sort of mine. Some of the psychos are trying to take over or something like that. And they kind of butt into to Roland and Mordecai's journey without Mordecai and Roland wanting them to. Roland and Mordecai kind of just start. Roland tells Mordecai to like kind of sabotage their vehicle for like an hour so they can get a head start because they don't want Daphne and Mordecai or Daphne and Brick to go with them, right? and try to leave them behind. Fast forward a little bit, Roland and Mordecai try to defend a settlement because Janelle is trying to take it over to further her options of a world or Pandora ownership. Drake and Daphne get captured multiple times. I mean, Roland gets captured once. Uh, Mordecai and Daphne kind of get it going a little bit, if you know what I mean. And hijinks and shenanigans ensue over the course of 400 pages, 375 to be exact. Uh, Shenanigans ensue in Janelle's mission to capture the Borderlands and recruit Roland and perhaps Mordecai in the process, right? So we can talk about characters now. Roland is seemingly the main character, and he gets most of the spotlight and is fleshed out the most when it comes to the rest of the cast. He's written with a lot more humanity than he was in Borderlands 1 and even in Borderlands 2. He monologues here and there, and he is like a bit of a softy, tough on the outside, soft on the inside type of guy. And he kind of always struggles with the eternal choice, whether to help, like for instance, when he's defending the settlement with Dakes and things like that. He's definitely the main character in a story where any one of these guys could be the main character because they're all skilled, they all have interesting stories, and they have interesting things you can kind of just self-insert or kind of make up, right? Because they're relatively blank slates in the video games until Borderlands 2 came along and established some lore, right? Mordecai's characterization, if we're moving on to him, comes with his skill with his gun and his friendship with Mordecai or with Roland, I mean, and his pet Bloodwing, who's basically her own character. She's very funny. She's portrayed very funny, and she holds her own, helping with Mordecai and Roland and Brick on their adventures along with Daphne. So I really liked how they wrote Mordecai. I really liked how they wrote Brick in this film. Brick is Brick. He has cool fight scenes. That's about it, really. I mean, they always referenced the dog paw that he has around his neck. That's about it. Daphne is more interesting because she's a famous assassin who, like I said, I think is a doll assassin who's basically the stand-in for Lilith, who is not in the novel. Uh, yeah, she's a stand-in. She wants to be left alone, and she doesn't want to do anything with Janella. She comes to respect the game with the gang. She falls in love with Mordecai, which is a little bit weird because by the time this book came out, I don't know if all the DLCs came out at the time, but the story with the DLCs is that Mordecai won Underdome and won Moxie as a prize, and this book takes place post Borderlands 1. But the books were non-canon anyways from the start, or maybe they were considered canon at one point and then they were considered non-canon, but I believe they're just non-canon from the start. And I think that detail only takes place in Borderlands 2. I don't know if it's revealed that Mordecai wins the Underdome and wins Moxie as his prize for winning the Underdome. So I don't blame John Shirley. It's just a little bit of romance. It doesn't really contribute much, right? Dinella, moving on to her, she's a typical protagonist, or typical antagonist, I mean. She doesn't have much to her besides a single, although important reason for her to hunt Daphne, which is revealed near the middle to end of the book. Some other characters, like we have the settlement leader Dakes, he pops up and helps the gang out near the end of the story. We talk about the setting. The setting is pretty consistent, taking place in the outside of Pandora or inside areas uh, and such, like settlements and camps and things like that. But I feel they're varied enough. You could kind of tell. It does kind of blend together a little bit. There's only so much you can write about a desert, basically a desert planet. Unlike, when we have in Borderlands 2, where you have the ice area and you have the underground caverns and things like that, and the industrial settings, like Sledge's safe house and things like that, similar to Sledge's safe house, right? You have the intro with the bus, you got the bar, you got Dake's settlement, various camping sites, the Coliseum later on in the story, the camps and areas that Janelle controls. It's not too much, and yes, it is a little on the little side, but I feel like the story's pace moves pretty well, and the places were described very well, and they were written very well to have that typical Borderlands feelings that you want from a novel or from any sort of Borderlands media. Now, let's move on to the writing. I am a little bit of a writer, but I'm not enough of a technical person or knowledgeable enough to understand a majority of writing decisions and such. So I feel that whenever I critique a writing, someone's writing or something like that, I don't do a good job because I don't know a lot and I don't really want to know too much about it, to be honest with you. I'm not like a professional, I'm just a hobbyist. But I think that John Shirley did a phenomenal job with the writing, and it really did make me feel as if I was reading a Borderlands novel, unlike the first novel, The Fallen. His characterization of Roland as a tough guy on the outside but soft guy on the inside is typical, but I thought that the way he handled it, John Shirley handled it, was quite good. His description of the planet and the character depictions are insightful and they're very helpful to visualize and makes the world feel lived in and realistic. I love his use of italics to emphasize the dialogue, his use of M dashes, which I'm trying to incorporate into my own writing and trying to understand a lot more grammar. He uses it to put an emphasized stop on sentences or to put an emphasis on a part of a sentence to make the story flow. And he puts it and inserts them in a way where it works really well for him and it works very well for the story as well. Now, that being said, his dialogue can be a bit stilted at times and a little bit rough, but given that the book was written and published, well, it wasn't written like 7 days after, but it was published about 7 days after the official release of Borderlands 2, makes me think he just had to go off the original Borderlands story and its DLCs and not be able to. I'm not sure how much information he was given on Borderlands 2 and the things and the stories that were being written for that, but it seems like he had a little bit of awareness in the epilogue of the story, but I'm not sure. Right? The book flows together very well, and I had a blast reading it. Right, and the pages seem to flow as I read on. His description of his action scenes are very good, and the way he describes the gore and things like that are well written and can be visualized pretty accurately, I would say, as much as you could visualize it, I guess. It's very Borderlands reminiscent, right? He also incorporates a lot of Borderlands guns in the story, which is an underrated aspect of this book. Some of which I heard and some of which I don't think I've heard. But I think there's only like one gun he may have made up. But from what I remember from reading and skimming through a little bit, they're pretty much consistent. And I really like the way he wrote the guns in this book. Now, getting near the end of this review here, 15 minutes in, I want to talk about my thoughts. I think that John Shirley really nailed it out of the park with this book, and this is what The Fallen should have been back in 2011. And I understand that John Shirley back in 2011 had the rough deal of trying to make a book out of a game property that hasn't become the worldwide gangbuster with tons of spin-offs and sequels just yet. They're probably still working on Borderlands 2 as soon as Borderlands 1 was done, right? After the DLCs. I think The Fallen fails as a Borderlands property spin-off with barely any Borderlands characters and a random protagonist and a random story. This book, however, Unconquered, brings back the entire OG crew besides Lilith, and is written quite accurately to their, and the characters are written quite accurately to the game counterparts, and they're pretty fleshed out, and I love the introduction of Daphne as a stand-in for Lilith. Daphne as a whole, as a new character, reminds me of Athena and the Lance Assassins, which were my favorite part of the Nox DLC stories, as well as Athena herself, and she's, one of my favorite Vault Hunters and pre-sequel, alongside Nisha. So I mainly play the girl characters, right? I draw girls, I play the girl characters, but I really like Athena's story and the way she looks and, just her, like, everything about her. You know what I mean? So while I may not like Daphne as much as Athena, I think they're very similar. I love the way Pandora was written. The action scenes are action-packed. The dialogue, while a bit rough, is absolutely accurate to the characters and the Borderlands vibes in general. The story of Janella amassing an army of psychos using mind control and the sus drug is a straight Borderlands type of plot line. And it's not it's not dissimilar to Tyrene and Troy being figureheads of their streaming empire and controlling the psychos through a worship and things of that nature. So that's when I said at the beginning review that this book is kind of similar to Borderlands 3's story a little bit, because they kind of have the same kind of base outline, right? I like the way John wrote Roland and Mordecai, and I really like the buddy-buddy relationship they had between them and Mordecai's relationship with Bloodwing. And they have an amazing original dynamic that's not even portrayed in the video games uh, to the same degree as in this book. But that's the difference, right, between a book and a video game story. And the length is kind of on the longer side for kind of a game novelization like this at 375 pages, but I felt like it flowed pretty well and it went by pretty fast. The story is what I would describe as somewhat pulpy. It doesn't contribute enough to the story and the characters from the games enough to hide away game essential plot points and storylines, but builds its characters and worlds enough to the point where it's a nice complementary story, but it's not important enough to the characters and their motivations to overshadow the main games. And that's kind of been the motto for all of the Borderlands spin-offs is don't let it overshadow the main games and don't hide secret plot points and characterizations away in the books that wouldn't be too accurate towards the video games. So I kind of support that more because I hate when you need to read a complementary or supplementary book to understand something, or like a piece of media to understand something the original game did not do, whether it's because of time constraints, whether it's because of developers being incompetent, whether it's because managers are pushing deadlines. I think it's a hack job, and I think that doing it this way, like with Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Land of the Giants, Moxie's Mysterious Memento, the old Borderlands comics, Origins, Fall of Firestone, Tannis in the Vault, they're all supplementary material that you don't need to read to understand, but it's nice to see the different types of interpretation of these characters by different authors and comic artists. All in all, is it worth reading and buying this book? I would say yes. It provides just enough Borderlands content for fans of the franchise to be content with the offerings written by John Shirley, and it's not worth too much on the secondhand market. The book is well written, and unlike the first book, actually relates to the franchise and the characters, right? And the characters we know and love. It's a quick, fun read. The book appearance is great. And like I said, grabbing this book and grabbing the whole trilogy doesn't cost that much. You can find it on eBay. You can find it on Abe Books, which is where I buy most of my stuff from eBay and Abe Books. You can buy each book for like $5 to $8 from either website. So they don't cost too much on the secondhand market. So I would grab basically the whole trilogy for like, I don't know, $20, $25 if you're a big Borderlands fan. So but at the very least, grab this book and give it a read if you want probably the best novelization there is. Although I haven't read Gunsight yet, I would imagine this still remains, the GOAT of the John Shirley Borderlands trilogy. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for me and this book review. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you wish to support me, my videos, my artwork, my stories, and yes, I've written some short stories, check them out. All my payment and tipping links, as well as social medias, will be in my profile. More videos, artworks, stories, and book talks will come regardless. Goodbye for now.